Hi all, many welcome to this on-demand webinar that we are bringing to you today. We are going to talk about lift test. For the ones who doesn't know me, my name is Pia. I've been working on marketing online for the last 6.5 years, and I have a previous experience running lift tests. And also with Winclap team, we run some listas for our clients. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about them, about the methodologies, and how you can understand better the performance of your campaigns. So today we're going to learn about what are the lift test methodologies you can work with. We are going to review a test implementation and also its analysis. And then finally, we are going to talk a little bit about actionables based on the results of the test. So first of all, going through the methodologies, today we're going to talk about the incrementality test that you can do to analyze the lift on specific events. Maybe you want to understand a little bit more about the incrementality on your installs or on some events such as purchases or registers of the user on your page or on your app. And here we want to measure everything at a company level. So these are campaigns that are going to run on a specific channel or media. First of all, what we're trying to do with this kind of test, we want to know if we have a lift equals to 0, that would mean that the campaign is not giving you any incremental users or events. And the hypothesis we want to try is that one. And then we are going to have a second hypothesis that will be if the lift is higher than 0, okay? All right, so here we have an example of how you should split the groups during this kind of tests. Always consider that what you're trying to achieve here is to understand the difference between running the campaign and not running the campaign. So what we're trying to recreate here is that scenario. So the control group will be the group of users that will see no ads for the media you're testing, and the treatment group is the group that is going to be impacted by those media ads. So these groups are defined with the device ID last digit. So you can customize the percentages of each groups, and that device ID is something we have on Programmatic on every bidding. So that would be really easy to you to do the splits. To synthesize a little bit, there are different medias you can run this kind of lift tests. You can run on Facebook on the test and learn section. Well, you can also have the objective of installs or actions, and you can have a custom audience to test. Also on Google, you can do a test for obtaining the lift on installs. And of course, as we are talking today, specifically for Programmatic, that you can have these kind of tests too. And here you will be able to understand a little bit more about this methodology. So what you're trying to see here is this is the test group that it's already scaled, because in case you choose to do a test that is not 50-50, you will have to scale that group. So this is already scaled to 50-50. So these are the baseline, the ones you see in A and B are the baseline users on the universe you're going to do the test. And D is the incremental volume of users that wouldn't have existed if you would not have the campaign running, okay? So here in Programmatic, we have the ability to do the split with device IDs, as I mentioned. Also, you can have their custom percentages if you want. You can also analyze midterm results. You can use custom windows to reach the statistical significance. So there's no need to run for 30 days. Maybe if you have enough volume, you can reach to results maybe earlier in 2 weeks, or sometimes in 10 days. You can have already results based on your conversion rate and the volume of users you have. Then you also have to consider that you want to run first a clean period for all the users there. Test and control group users will be cleaning by, well, the time you need there is the time you have the attribution on your campaign. So let's say that you are running with a 7-day click-through attribution. You will have to clean those users for 7 days if you were running campaigns before, and you will have to pause your existing campaigns for 7 days, and then turn on the campaign only on the treatment group, okay? So that is something really, really important to be able to have a fair test. And then, of course, with Programmatic, what you can have is extra granular results. So you can analyze each of the ad formats you're running, each of the size you are running, also all of your site IDs, the frequency cap on different kind of users. And well, this programmatic test allows you to compare the lift versus the actual attribution you are having on your campaigns. So here's a more detailed list of all these features we were talking about. So you can be sure that with programmatic lift test, you will be able to see all of this information from your test analysis. And then we're going to talk a little bit about other alternatives to testing, just in case you are not able to do these kind of splits by device ID, and you cannot randomize the users with any other key value. So you can run a geo test. Here is an example of how was the distribution for different cities in Brazil and different cities in Mexico. This is a geo test of a 50% treatment and 50% control. So what you have to do is to find cities or regions where you know the users are behaving comparably. So now we are going to go through some graphs that maybe are going to make this easier to understand. So here what you have is you analyze how these regions were behaving over time. So you have the historical data of these two regions, and you have their relationships between those two, okay? So with that information, you can adjust a model so you can capture what is the relationship between them over the time you want to analyze the historical data. And then you will do, again, this treatment and control. In this case, control group is the group that you are going to leave on ads, on active ads, and treatment is the one you're going to turn off. This is because you are not turning, it's just that you are pausing odds for a certain kind of users, okay? So here, it's maybe like the best slide to understand how this works. So you were analyzing test and control over time until the number 8, and you then on the number 8, you pause all the marketing efforts on that region, or any marketing efforts on that region, to analyze how it behaved. So you see how they drop down, and the blue line, that is the test line, stabilized, okay? So between 14 and 18, it's stable. So there you know that information is the one you want to use to do the analysis. So between 14 and 18, you have the blue line, you have the yellow line, that is the counterfactual that you calculate to estimate how that population would have behaved if they would have seen the ads. And to do that, you are going to keep the same relation between test and control that you had on the historical data, and you're going to use that information and that relation to estimate the counterfactual of the test group, okay? So now you have the difference, and you have how the population would have been acting, and how did they really act over your web page or your app, okay? So there you can compare those two, and the difference between the blue line and the yellow line is the incrementality of that test. So then, of course, you want to analyze the difference between the test and control group. So you are going to analyze the behavior of the treatment group against their counterfactual, as I mentioned before. So you analyze the difference between them, and you will be able to have the lift result here. All right, so now moving forward to the implementation and analysis of these kind of tests. What we are going to have is two hypotheses, one with the conversion rate equals on both groups, and the other one different, okay? So now you have to analyze and to understand, of course, the conversion rate that you're going to have on the test group and on the control group. And this number comes from the relationship between all the installs you have for the treatment groups over the impacted users, the unique impacted users that you have also on that same treatment group, and the same number you have to calculate for control group. So here's something important. So from the list of device IDs that you are impacting, you're not going to analyze over attributed installs, neither for events. So you're not going to look to attribution. What you have to do is, with these two campaigns, collect all the device IDs that were impacted on each of the groups, and you're going to have a table with all the device IDs for the test group and all the device IDs for the control group. And they are going to cross those device IDs with the users that install the app for your whole company, okay? So it's not going to be an analyze over attributed, not at all. So you're going to analyze what happened on the whole company results, okay, based on the lists of device IDs you collected. All right, so now we are going to talk a little bit more about significance, but then you have to also decide which is the media source that you're going to run the test at. And also be always care about controlling the frequency cap you're going to have and the ad format distribution. We are going to talk about that later too. But the importance here is that you keep like the same baseline on the two campaigns you're running, okay? So the test and the control campaign. So here, as we said before, the blue area here, A and B, is the baseline that you're going to have, and the D is the lift we are trying to find with this kind of test, okay? All right, so now, in order to have everything you need for your test, you need to know which is the user's volume that you're going to have with the campaign. That will help you determine the split size. Also, based on the split size and the users and the significance you want to reach, you're going to decide which is the duration of your day of your test, maybe in days or in weeks. And then with your conversion rate and the lift you are trying to get, you're going to be able to determine the baseline and also the estimated or the lift you're going to probably have from your campaign. There are some benchmarks on the industry to understand a little bit more about it. So let's suppose we are running a test with a baseline conversion rate, and we are going to detect a difference of 15% relative to that baseline conversion rate. Sometimes it's 50, you can use 20, it depends on the conversion rate you actually have, but that is a good number to start your first test. So you have here one tool that helped us a lot, that is Evan Miller's online calculator. So you can go to Evan Miller on Google and you can find it. And there you have like two different tools that you can use. This first one, that is the sample size calculator, will help you understand, based on the baseline conversion rate you have and the leaf test you want to analyze here, which is the sample size you need to have, okay? So that sample size will be the number of unique users you need to reach on each of the campaigns in order to have statistical significance, all right? So there you need the baseline conversion rate, the expected change, and there you will have your response of users, okay? So the sample size will be the users for you, users on each group. And then when you have the results, you can use the chi-square test, and that one will be the one that is going to show you if the rate of success is different between the two groups, and if that difference is statistically significant too, okay? So now we're going to review that when we check some results, okay? So there are a lot of calculators that you can use, but this one is pretty intuitive and it's online and you can use it as many times as you need. You do not have to log in or anything. It's really, really useful for this kind of test. So here is an example of, well, a test that ran with a 75% group on the test side and 25% on the control side. So here you see that the test is going to have the client creative, and then on the control side, we do not want to show anything related to the brand. So what we are usually doing is some partnership with ONGs. In this case, there is an example of what we ran with the people of Peninsula Mitre. They were on a campaign on that time. They were trying to reach some signatures from users in order to move on with their project, and we helped them a lot to get more signatures there. And that was good because we also needed those users in order to do the analysis of the campaigns. So with those impressions, we were able to capture the device IDs of the users that were impacted by that campaign, but if the test was not running, would have been impacted by the brand campaign, okay? So that is the way that you can do your holdout group. So here, moving a little bit more close to the result analysis, here is an Evan Miller screenshot. So here you have, for sample 1, that may be test or control, and sample 2. So here you have test and control. You can put in here the number of successes that it will be, for example, installs over trials that are going to be the number of impacted unique users, okay? So you complete these four fields, and then you will have that your sample number 2 is more successful or not, maybe not. If you have, if it says that it's not successful, what you can do is run your test a little bit longer, just to be sure that you have enough information to find a difference between the two groups. But here in this case, the difference was good. So it says the sample 2, that was the test group, was successful. The p-value was less than 1%, and there was a high confidential level of more than 95%, okay? So the lift, that is the number that we're trying to reach, is this formula. So you have the conversion rate on your test group over the conversion rate on the control group -1, and there you will have the percentage of the lift. So let's say it's a 20% lift. So what you can say there is that the campaign is bringing 20% of users that wouldn't have happened if the campaign was not running. And now what we're trying to do is to change that number into an absolute number, okay? But then some things to have in mind running these kind of tests. In this case, we are running a test over the Winclap universe or the media search universe, but that universe is going to be impacted with other online ads, with offline ads, own media efforts, and any other efforts, because that will be the same on both groups, okay? So those are different universe, so you cannot expect to have a test and a lift result for a programmatic campaign that is going to be comparable with a test from other online media such as Facebook, Google, Twitter, offline, or whatever. Those are not comparable numbers because they are different universe. So this is something to keep in mind, because it's not that you can do 2 or 3 or 4 different tests and you cannot compare those numbers because those tests are over different universe, okay? So the result of any lift test will tell you that those instances would not have happened if the campaign was not running. That is really something really important, a key takeaway from the test. So now when it comes to the interpretation of the results, some question you may be asking is, how many users downloaded the app due to a power of the brand in spite of the programmatic efforts, okay? So we know that here we collect the data from the control group to build this counterfactual, okay? So here is the baseline installs you got on your control group. Here is already scaled to 50%. And this is the baseline because it's the same number, but the B plus D is the total cohorted installs for the test group, okay? So here is the thing you have to focus on. You have to difference the baseline between the incremental, all right? So these are some comparisons you must have yes or yes in order to be sure that it was a healthy test. So you have to analyze the ad size distribution between test and control group, also the ad format distribution, the sub-IDs distributions, also the volume of impacts per user on each group, and that you have the same optimization method on both groups, okay? So these 5, and maybe you can find more, there are some control points that will make you sure that you run a fair and clean test, okay? So now moving forward to the actions that you can take over these results, all right? So this is an example that you run a test in Argentina for the operating system of Android, and you were analyzing mainly installs, but also you can get a result on events. So based on the information we've seen before, we can reject the null hypothesis because we know that the sample 2 was more successful, and we can determine a percentage of lift. And then based on that, we can know the whole volume of installs we had on the test group and the baseline installs we got from the control campaign. And when you do you take off the baseline installs from the test installs, you just keep the incremental installs, okay? So working with that number is going to give you the number you're looking for. And also there you have the investment. So you know you have to only look for the investment on the treatment campaign. Like the control campaign, that investment is not going to be added here, okay? So with the number that you had for investment and also the number of incremental installs, you can finally get the cost per incremental install. That is like the greatest number you can have from this test. You will be able to understand how much extra will cost you to have an extra user based on the campaign you are running on that media source, okay? And that will be mainly incremental. That is also different from attribution, okay? So the number there is also incremental events. In case you have some event measured on both campaigns, you can do that same analysis for events, okay? Or maybe if you have a ratio of events, it's not like the best option, but maybe events are not statistically significant, but you have a ratio. I don't know, you say that from over 100 users that install your app, 20 get to see the shopping cart, okay? So if you have that ratio, you can extrapolate those numbers to events too, and you can get the cost per incremental event. And finally, based on that values, if you also have the lifetime value that the users have on your app or on your site over the investment, you can have the net value of that media source running, okay? Because you know that with the lifetime value is the number, the amount of money you get, and with the investment is how much you spent, okay? So the result of those two is your net value for that campaign on that specific media. Now moving forward with more results, what you can do after you have this test, this successful test for one geo or for one media source, you can do this extension to other geos and operating systems. So the best situation would be that you are able to create one table like this one, okay? So you have this very organized and very clear for you and your team to understand which is the incremental of each campaign in each geo, and also what is the net value of that media source. So this is like a review of what we provide when we do the programmatic tests at Winclap. We give a result summary with an executive presentation. Also, we do all the analysis that shows that treatment and control groups are comparable, as I mentioned before. We can give you the code to replicate the results on your side, because you're going to be able to access to all the information, and you will be able to analyze that those two groups were fairly comparable. Then you will be able to have the data at impression and device ID level on an FTP server or whatever you need to replicate this analysis, and you will have the methodology defined for having next steps. Let's say sometimes we suggest new geos or new channel. There are always some lift analysis that you can also do based on these same results. So you can like squeeze all this data to get like the more information you have, you can from this test, okay? So, well, we are very, very grateful that you stay with us to hear all this training about lift test. We want to share with you more of this information that we have. So if you have any topic you want to know a little bit more about, and we can help you with that, don't hesitate to write to us, and we can soon, hopefully, be showing you new webinars, be sharing with you more of our experience. And well, thank you again for joining.